They say the world we see is only half the story, that beneath the surface of the ordinary lies a realm we dare not acknowledge, a realm of shadows, of whispers, of things that linger unseen. What if I told you there are places in this world where that hidden realm breaks through? Places where time twists, where the air grows heavy, and where the line between the living and the dead vanishes altogether. These are places with histories soaked in blood, grief, and fear. They are steeped in stories of the unexplained, some whispered over campfires, others documented in cold clinical detail. And yet, no matter how often the stories are told, they never lose their grip on us. Because deep down, we all know. Some places never forget. Tonight I'll take you to those places. The haunted halls, the cursed forests, the ruins where screams still echo. They exist all around us, across continents, across centuries. And whether you believe in ghosts or not, one thing is certain. Something is there, waiting, watching. So lock your doors, dim the lights, and listen closely. Because the most chilling stories aren't the ones we create. They're the ones that refuse to fade. Let's start with the Island of the Dolls, Mexico. There are places in this world that defy explanation, places where the line between the living and the dead feels dangerously thin. One such place lies hidden in the labyrinth of canals in Xochimilco, just south of Mexico City. This is La Isla de las Muñecas, the Island of the Dolls. To see it is to step into a waking nightmare. To understand its story is to feel its weight long after you've left. And once you've heard the truth, you may never see dolls the same way again. Imagine this. The sun is beginning to set, casting long shadows across the still dark water of the canal. Your boat glides slowly, the paddle cutting through the surface with a soft, rhythmic splash. The air is humid, thick with the scent of wet vegetation and something else. Something faintly metallic like rust. The trees around you begin to close in, their gnarled branches reaching overhead to form a canopy that blocks out the light. You feel a strange tightness in your chest, a sense that something is wrong, though you can't yet say why. And then you see it. The island rises out of the water like a wound in the landscape, its edges tangled with roots and brambles. At first it's hard to make sense of what you're looking at. Shapes hang from the trees, twisting and swaying gently in the breeze. As you draw closer, your stomach tightens. They're dolls, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They hang from the branches by their necks, their arms, their legs. Their faces are cracked and stained, their hair tangled with cobwebs. Some are missing eyes, others have no heads at all. Their empty sockets seem to watch you as you approach, and for a moment you're certain one of them just moved. This isn't a place that feels abandoned. It feels alive, but not in the way that makes you feel welcome. No, this is something else entirely. This island carries a story that began with death and continues to be haunted by it. Decades ago, this island was the home of a man named Don Julian Santana. He came here seeking isolation, a quiet life away from the noise of the city. But the peace he sought was short-lived. One day, while walking along the edge of the canal, he found something that would change everything: the body of a young girl. She had drowned, her small, pale form tangled in the weeds near the shore. Her lifeless eyes stared up at him, unblinking. Julian tried to save her, but it was too late. And that's when it began. From that moment on, he said he could feel her presence. At first, it was subtle, the sensation of being watched, a faint whisper carried on the wind. Then it grew stronger. He heard her crying at night, her voice echoing through the trees. He saw shadows moving at the edge of his vision. Julian became convinced that the girl's spirit was trapped on the island, angry and restless. He believed she wanted something from him, something he couldn't give. Desperate to appease her, he began collecting dolls. He hung them from the trees, hoping their hollow eyes and plastic faces would keep her company, or perhaps protect him from her wrath. At first it seemed to work. The whispers faded, and the shadows retreated. But then the dolls began to change. Neighbors claimed they saw their heads turning on their own, their glassy eyes shifting to follow whoever passed by. Others swore they heard soft giggles in the night, or felt the brush of tiny hands on their arms. Julian dismissed these stories, insisting the dolls were harmless, just a gift for the girl's spirit. But deep down, he must have known something was wrong, because he never left the island. He stayed, surrounded by the dolls until the day he died. They found his body floating in the canal, face down in the same spot where he had found the girl all those years ago. Some say he drowned. Others believe the girl finally claimed him. But whatever the truth, the island has never been the same. The dolls remain, their bodies decaying with each passing year, their faces warped by time and the elements. Visitors to the island report hearing faint whispers carried on the wind. Some claim to have seen the dolls move, their heads turning to follow them as they walked. Others swear they've heard the cries of a child, soft at first, then rising to an ear-piercing wail. And then there are those who never return. Their boats are found adrift, empty, near the edge of the island. Did they fall victim to the spirit of the drowned girl? Or did something else, something darker, claim them? One thing is certain. La Isla de las Muñecas is not a place for the faint of heart. The dolls are still there, waiting, and if you listen closely, you might hear them whispering. Not to each other, but to you. Do you know about the Winchester Mystery House, USA? Listen. Not all prisons are made of stone and steel. Some are built of guilt, grief, and fear. In the heart of San Jose, California, there stands such a place, the Winchester Mystery House. It is a mansion like no other, a sprawling, endless labyrinth of rooms, corridors, and staircases that seem to lead nowhere. It's a place where logic is twisted and reality feels fractured. To walk its halls is to feel the weight of something unseen, something that lingers just out of reach. And it all began with a curse. In 1881, Sarah Winchester became the heiress to the massive Winchester rifle fortune after the sudden deaths of her infant daughter and husband. But the inheritance came with a terrible price. You see, the Winchester rifle was known as the gun that won the West, but it was also the gun that took thousands of lives. Consumed by grief and guilt, Sarah sought answers from a spiritualist. What she was told would change her life forever. The medium claimed that Sarah was cursed, that the spirits of those killed by Winchester rifles were hunting her. She would never know peace, the medium said, unless she built a home for them. But there was one condition. The construction could never stop. If it did, Sarah herself would die. Terrified and desperate, she began building, and she didn't stop. For 38 years, the sound of hammers and saws echoed through the air. Day and night, workers added new rooms, sealed off old ones, and created a labyrinth designed to confuse the spirits. The result was a mansion unlike anything the world had ever seen. More than 160 rooms, 10,000 windows, 2,000 doors. Some doors open into walls. Others lead to sheer drops. There are staircases that twist upward into ceilings, and corridors that spiral endlessly, as though they're trying to lead you astray. It is a house with no map, no plan, and no end. Today, the Winchester Mystery House stands as a monument to Sarah's madness, or perhaps to her brilliance. But if you visit, you'll quickly realize this is more than just a strange building. Guests and staff alike have reported things they cannot explain. Footsteps echo in empty hallways. Doors slam shut on their own. Some say they've seen the figure of a woman in black, the spirit of Sarah herself, still wandering her endless creation. Others claim to hear whispers in the dead of night, or feel a sudden icy hand grip their shoulder when no one is there. Visitors often say the house has a way of disorienting you, as though it's alive. It's easy to get lost in its twisting halls, and some say the spirits Sarah sought to trap have found new victims. Those who spend too long inside sometimes report changes. They feel as though they're being watched, as though the house itself is studying them, deciding whether to let them leave. Be careful where you step. That door might lead to a 4-story drop. That staircase might lead to nowhere. And if you hear a voice calling your name, don't follow it. Because in the Winchester Mystery House, not everything that moves is alive. Aokigahara Forest, Japan. Beneath the shadow of Mount Fuji lies a forest like no other, a place where the trees seem to breathe, where silence is heavy, and where hope is devoured. This is Aokigahara, the Sea of Trees. Its beauty hides a terrible truth. For centuries, it has been a place of death, drawing people who seek to disappear. But the living are not the only ones who walk these woods. Many believe that Aokigahara is haunted, its trees saturated with the pain of the countless souls who took their last breaths here. As you step into the forest, the first thing you notice is the quiet. The dense canopy of trees blocks out the sunlight, and the volcanic rock absorbs sound, creating an eerie stillness. Even your own footsteps feel muffled, as though the forest is swallowing them. But the silence is deceptive. If you listen closely, you might hear it, the faintest whisper carried on the wind. Or was it the wind? It's hard to tell. The deeper you go, the more disoriented you become. The trees seem to close in around you, their twisted branches forming shapes that look almost human. Locals say the forest is home to the eerie, vengeful spirits trapped between this world and the next. They are said to appear as pale, spectral figures with hollow eyes and long white hair. According to legend, they lead the unwary deeper into the woods, where they vanish without a trace. Those who encounter them often report a sudden, overwhelming sense of dread. Others claim to hear voices calling their name, or feel an invisible hand brushing against their arm. And then there are the suicides. Signs are posted at the forest's entrance, urging visitors to reconsider their decision. Yet every year, search teams recover bodies, some freshly deceased, others long forgotten. The forest seems to cling to them, their belongings scattered like offerings at the base of the trees. Those who venture too far often find remnants of campsites, nooses hanging from branches, and messages scrawled on scraps of paper. Some leave out of fear, others don't leave at all. In Aokigahara, you are never truly alone. The spirits are waiting, watching, and if you listen too closely to the whispers, you might find yourself drawn into the shadows, where no one will ever find you. The Tower of London, England. Few places in the world carry the weight of history like the Tower of London. For nearly 1,000 years, this fortress has stood as a symbol of power, fear, and bloodshed. Its walls have witnessed intrigue, betrayal, and the violent end of countless lives. But while history has moved on, it seems that not all of those who perished here have. Many believe that the tower is one of the most haunted places in England, a place where the past refuses to stay buried. Imagine standing before its cold gray walls on a foggy evening. The Thames flows sluggishly nearby, its surface glinting dully under the pale moonlight. The air smells of damp stone and iron. As you step through the gates, a shiver runs down your spine. The cobblestones beneath your feet feel steeped in sorrow, and the shadows seem darker here, heavier. You are not alone. though no one walks beside you. This is where Anne Boleyn, the second wife of King Henry VIII, met her end. Accused of treason, she was executed on the Tower Green in 1536. Her death was swift, but her suffering did not end there. For centuries, visitors and guards have reported seeing her figure wandering the corridors, her head tucked under her arm. Some say she appears near the site of her execution, her eyes filled with a sorrow that words cannot describe. Others claim to have seen her in the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, where her body lies buried, her silent presence filling the air with an unbearable sadness. And she is not the only one. The princes in the tower, two young boys who vanished under mysterious circumstances in the late 15th century, are said to haunt the White Tower. Their faint childlike whispers have been heard echoing through the halls, and some have claimed to see their small figures standing hand in hand, their faces pale and sorrowful. They vanish the moment anyone approaches, leaving behind only a lingering chill. Then there's the lady in white. She is often seen standing on the battlements, her figure shrouded in mist. Those who encounter her describe a sense of overwhelming dread, as though the very air has turned against them. Some have even claimed that she reaches out to them, her hand cold and insubstantial, before disappearing into the night. The tower has claimed so many lives over the centuries, traitors, royals, prisoners of war. Their stories are etched into the stones, their pain woven into the fabric of the fortress. But the most terrifying thing about the Tower of London isn't what has happened there. It's the sense that even now the tower is alive, that the walls are listening, and that the ghosts of the past are waiting for someone new to join them. Bhangarh Fort, India. In the state of Rajasthan, among the arid hills and crumbling ruins, lies a place so steeped in legend and fear that no one dares to enter it after sunset. This is Bhangarh Fort, a site of ancient beauty and unspeakable terror. The locals believe it is cursed, a place where the boundary between the living and the dead has been shattered, and those who visit often leave with more than just stories. The fort is magnificent at first glance, its grand gates and stone walls rising against the rugged landscape. But as you approach, a strange sense of unease begins to take hold. The wind seems to carry whispers, faint and unintelligible. The closer you get, the heavier the air feels, as though the very earth beneath your feet is warning you to turn back. The curse of Bhangarh, they say, began with a sorcerer who fell in love with a beautiful princess. She rejected his advances, and in his fury he cast a spell on the fort, cursing it to ruin. Not long after, the kingdom fell, its people massacred. Since then, the fort has remained abandoned, its halls and courtyards filled only with echoes of the past. But those who venture inside often report strange occurrences, footsteps where no one walks, shadows moving in the corners of their vision, and the faint sound of a woman's laughter echoing through the empty corridors. Some visitors have claimed to see figures in the darkness, glimpses of the sorcerer or the princess, their forms flickering like mirages. Others have felt an unseen force tugging at their clothes, as though trying to pull them deeper into the ruins. And there are those who enter Bhangarh at night and are never seen again. The locals warn against staying after dark, saying that once the sun sets, the spirits awaken, and the fort becomes a trap, a place where time and reality unravel. Bhangarh Fort is more than just a ruin. It is a wound in the fabric of the world, a place where the past bleeds into the present, and if you're not careful, you might find yourself lost there forever. The Myrtles Plantation, USA. In the heart of Louisiana, surrounded by ancient oak trees draped in Spanish moss, lies the Myrtles Plantation. It is a place of beauty, with its grand veranda and timeless charm. But beneath its picturesque exterior lies a darker truth. The Myrtles is said to be one of the most haunted homes in America, its history stained with tragedy, betrayal, and death. The plantation's most famous ghost is Chloe, a former enslaved woman who, according to legend, was caught eavesdropping on her master's conversations. As punishment, her ear was cut off, and she began wearing a green turban to hide the scar. Seeking revenge, Chloe baked a cake poisoned with oleander leaves, intending to make her master ill. But her plan went horribly wrong. His wife and 2 young daughters ate the cake instead, dying in agony. Chloe was hanged for her crime, and her spirit is said to haunt the plantation to this day. Visitors have reported seeing a woman in a green turban wandering the grounds. Some say she appears at the foot of their bed at night, staring silently before vanishing into the shadows. Others have seen her reflection in mirrors, even when no one else is in the room. And then, there are the unexplained occurrences, lights flickering, doors slamming shut, and the sound of children's laughter echoing through the empty halls. But Chloe is not alone. The Myrtles Plantation is said to be home to as many as 12 spirits. The ghost of a young girl has been seen playing on the veranda, only to disappear when approached. A soldier from the Civil War era has been spotted walking the grounds, his presence marked by the faint smell of gunpowder. And in one room, visitors have reported the sensation of being suffocated, as though invisible hands are gripping their throat. The Myrtles Plantation is a house of stories, some told, some untold. And if you visit, you might leave with one of your own. But remember, the spirits of the Myrtles don't always let go. And so, our journey through the world's most chilling, haunted locations comes to an end. From sprawling mansions riddled with secrets to ancient fortresses soaked in centuries of anguish, we have glimpsed the darker side of history, the stories that refuse to fade, the spirits that refuse to rest. Each of these places is a doorway, a fragile boundary between the known and the unknown, the living and the dead. But what lingers most are not the ghostly apparitions or the whispered voices, but the emotions, the pain, the fear, the longing. These places are not just haunted by spirits, but by the echoes of human lives, of choices made and lives lost. The walls remember, the ground absorbs, and the air carries with it the weight of untold stories. And yet, even as we leave these haunted locations behind, they do not leave us. The eerie silence of Aokigahara, the chilling corridors of the Winchester Mystery House, the mournful cries on Poveglia Island, each lingers like a shadow in the corners of our minds. They remind us of the mysteries that lie just beyond our understanding, daring us to look closer, to question, to wonder. So, whether you believe in ghosts or not, whether these tales are truth or legend, one thing is certain: these places hold power, a power that transcends time, stirring something deep within us, something primal. The question is, should you ever find yourself standing at the edge of one of these haunted places, will you dare to step inside? Or will you turn away, leaving their secrets buried in the shadows where they belong? Because some doors once opened can never be closed, ever be.